What's up, people? Welcome back to the Ecom Dispensary. It's your boy Nate Schmidt here with your other boy, Scotty. Scotty, what the heck is going on, my dude?
Nothing much. Thank you for the wonderful intro.
Always, 100%, man, 100%. So yeah, welcome back to this is Knowledge Drop number 23. We're getting pretty damn close to episode number 100. Maybe we should do something special. Episode 100 will be next week. What do you think? Should we do something special, Scott, man?
We certainly should do something.
I don't know what that special something looks like, but if you got ideas, let us know. This week, though, we got some episodes for you on the menu. This first one, we're starting off talking about the different stages of ecom. This is an idea I had on a walk yesterday. I was taking a nice little walk through the neighborhood. And I had the idea to talk about the kind of different stages of ecom and what each of those look like, what your kind of goals are in each stage, and what the most important levers to be focusing on, the things that you should be doing, the most important things, higher ROI activities, et cetera, to be doing in each of these stages to try to reach the next stage. So, Scotty, I'm not sure if you maybe have a different take. I have 5 main stages of the ecom journey. What do you think? Does that look about right to you?
Let's see what you have to say about it.
Okay. So this first stage is obviously the just getting started and you're kind of like learning stage. So this is the stage. I was in this stage probably midway through 2017 to like early 2018. And this is basically just the stage where you just recently found out about this whole ecom thing, this whole online business thing. You're like, oh my God, I can actually like make a living not working a job and just like work from my freaking laptop. Like that's crazy. And then you kind of dive deep into that and you start learning about all the different ways that you could potentially do that. Obviously, we're talking about specifically ecom. So you're learning about ecom. You know, you probably are watching YouTube videos about drop shipping and, all that kind of thing. You're just learning about it. All right. You're just learning about it. You haven't really done a whole lot of anything. You're just trying to get the basic understanding under your belt so that you can get started. That's kind of how I view the first stage. In terms of what your goals are here, I would say that your goals are to learn the bare basics as fast as humanly possible. The thing about this stage is this is the stage that, I mean, like out of the 100% of people who, get to this stage, like I would say 90% of them never even make it out of this stage. This is the very beginner stage. And a lot of people just kind of spend all their time learning and they never actually do anything. So I think the main goal is just like, get out of the stage as fast as possible. And the way that you do that is essentially just by starting to take action, like by actually building stores, running ads, and testing products.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, they're just getting started phase and testing could or should fall together. I guess there's kind of 2 types: the type of person that goes and learns a bunch before starting, and the person that learns about it day one and sets up a store same day. Certainly taking action is probably more likely to lead to some sort of a good result. But I think the shorter you keep a pure learning phase, the better.
I agree. Because I think that you do have to do some sort of initial learning. If you're going into this completely blind, you have no idea what you're doing. You just found out about ecom. There are certain things that you have to learn. You got to learn how the business model works. You got to learn like the basics of advertising. You got to learn like the technical side of things, like how to actually set everything up with, all the different softwares with Shopify, with Facebook ads, AliExpress, Oberlo. You have to learn like that kind of basic stuff. But beyond that, I think that's really all you really need to get out of this stage. And I think ideally, what do you think is probably the shortest amount of time that you could be in this stage of just purely learning before you actually start doing anything?
It just depends. I think if you have some sort of prior experience with direct response or marketing, you could literally do this in half a day. But if you have no experience with sales, marketing, or anything like that, you probably want to get some sort of an idea of marketing principles and also how the business works. Because just getting a basic idea of how the business works is quick. Like that's like 3 YouTube videos if you already know how to market something else.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times you're going to get shitty information that's going to set you back more than it helps when you're just getting started. You're going to start looking at a bunch of factors like, okay, how many orders does this product have on AliExpress? You're going to listen to one person who says you have to ship from the US. Then you're going to get caught up in the whole dropshipping is dead hype. And because you're new, you can't really discern what is real and, or not even real, but what is good info and what isn't. So it can be tough. I really think you need to get started fucking as soon as possible, within a week tops.
Yeah. I think that would probably be good advice. Most people, I mean, definitely in my case, like I probably spent almost 6 months in this stage because I just didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was just like, I don't know. I was kind of dipping my toes in, just learning about everything. And it took a while for me to feel like I actually had enough knowledge to get started. And the thing about that is like you never really actually feel like you're ready to get started. But at some point you kind of just got to decide like, am I going to do this or not? And if you are, then you got to get started at some point. And it really, again, I mean, it's a very base level amount of knowledge that you need to actually, to actually get started, to actually start testing products.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's the first stage. Stage number 2 is when you're actually taking action, you're testing products, but you haven't found a whole lot of success yet. This is, again, I mean, of the people who get into this stage, most of them do not make it out. And I feel like that's kind of the case with every one of these stages. It's like an order of magnitude drop for each one. At this stage, you've learned the bare basics of what you need to know, and you've actually started testing stores. So you've built stores on Shopify, you've run ads on Facebook. Maybe you've made some sales, maybe you haven't, but you're actually doing the thing. You're actually starting to do the thing that is potentially going to make you successful. And I think that's about the rundown of this stage. In terms of goals, I mean, the goal here, I think, is to obviously the goal is to like get something working profitably, but I think that's a results based goal, and we've talked about this in a previous episode. You kind of want to set yourself process oriented goals versus results oriented goals. So I think in terms of the process, the goal here is just to basically every day be testing something. You want to have very few days where you're not testing something. You test the product for, say 3 days or so. You want to have as little downtime. If that doesn't work, you need to be evaluating what you're doing and coming up with, basically what we call your next round of tests, and just kind of constantly going through that process, testing different products, different offers, different ads, different angles. And I mean, this can definitely take a pretty long time.
Yeah, and to clarify there, at first you made it sound like you want to be testing something every day, like daily ad testing. That is not what you're saying. What you're actually saying is you always want to have a test running.
Yeah.
Because I think specifically in this stage, you're not ready yet to be testing stuff daily. And you're going to have like a 3-day waiting period, which can be frustrating, but that's where you go back to learning. That's where you go look at your results, critically analyze what you're doing, think about next steps, but also let things run for 2 to 3 days without touching it, because just kind of how this game works.
Yeah. I would agree. And then in terms of like the most important levers to be focusing on, I mean, it's really just like running ads. Running ads is like the number one thing here. Obviously, you don't want to be blindly running ads. You want to be, this is another episode that we've talked about in the past. You want to be very intentional with what you're testing and actually like thinking through these things and like having some sort of a strategy, having like when you're running ads, you want to be testing something. What is the objective of what I'm testing? Am I testing a new offer? Am I testing new ads? Am I testing an entirely new product? You want to have like some sort of like hammered down objective for each test, so that, I mean, it's kind of like I don't know, like the scientific method almost, where like you have a hypothesis And then you create an experiment to test that hypothesis and you see the results. And then you just kind of keep doing that over and over again.
You have to have a hypothesis for every test. It's not just like, oh, I don't know, maybe let's make this button orange and let's go. It's like a lot of people will like fuck around, and I actually have this feeling when people try to change the price when I'm like, oh, what if you tested recently? They're like, oh, I haven't really tested anything new. I'm thinking we should change the price. I'm like, okay, that's a cool idea, but the reason why you want to change the price is because it takes you 2 seconds and it's no work. Um, and you're sort of averse to be doing the actual work, which is getting new content, coming up with ad angles, writing copy, whatever it is. So make sure you're doing the actual work and not just fucking around, pretending to be testing stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like changing the price, like that's not a bad thing to do, but you don't want to just be thinking like, okay, I'm just going to change the price. It's a bit deeper than that. You want to be like, okay, how can I change this offer? And the price is one aspect of that, but there's a lot more that can go into it. And you want to be like trying to come up with the best offer that you possibly can. Is the price involved in that? Absolutely. But it's not just as, just like as basic as, okay, I'm going to lower the price or I'm going to raise the price. Maybe I'll do a buy one, get one free offer. Or maybe, I'll do this, do that, whatever it is. Like there's just got to be some sort of, I don't know, some sort of strategy behind it. And it's a bit more than just the price. At least it certainly can be. So that's stage 2. Stage 3, this is when things start getting kind of exciting. Stage 3 is when you start to reach the early stages of profitability. You've done all the basic learning. You've been testing stuff for, I mean, it could be no time at all, or it could be months. It really just depends on the specific situation. At this stage, you're actually starting to see some results. Like you're running ads and you're making sales. You're making sales somewhat consistently, and it's still at very low scale, but you're actually seeing some profit. And this is where, I mean, this is really where I think like the journey actually begins. Because up to this point, everything is just kind of like learning. You're trying to figure stuff out, and then this is the point where from here, once you get to this point, it's, I mean, it's not guaranteed by any means, but you're on the right track and you're very close to getting to the point where you, I mean, honestly, could like potentially change your life.
Yeah. The frustrating part here is it's going to be very volatile. You're going to have profitable days and unprofitable days, and you're going to have multiple unprofitable days in a row, and you're not going to know whether you need to change something, whether you're going to start doubting yourself. It's a frustrating time that you kind of have to go through.
Yeah. I think the goal in this stage is to improve your results enough. And I mean, basically just get them as consistent as you possibly can at low scale. Spending, I don't know, somewhere maybe around $100 a day on Facebook. Another really important part of this is kind of dialing in your sourcing and fulfillment. And if up to this point, you were probably testing with AliExpress, at least if you're doing things the way that we kind of talk about, you're testing products with AliExpress and your shipping times are slow. Your customers probably aren't that satisfied. But now you're at the stage where this is actually showing promise and you want to kind of start treating it much more like a real business. So maybe you switch to using a dropshipping agent that's going to give you faster processing times, faster shipping times, a bit of a better experience. And maybe you even place a bulk order, ship it to the US and get that worked out with a fulfillment center or 3PL, which, side note, we're going to be talking about in one of the later episodes this week. Kind of the rundown on working with 3PLs and fulfillment centers and what to look for and everything like that. But then from there, I think the real goal is back to what I was just saying, is it's getting the results consistent at low scale and working to essentially improve the business to the point where you can scale. Because the thing about scaling a business is this kind of like constant process of improving the results so that you have a high enough margin to be able to scale. Then you scale, and then you probably like level out at that, whatever that level of scale is, for a while. And then you kind of repeat the process. You try to improve the results, get that ROAS a bit higher, become a little bit more profitable so that you can scale again. And at this stage, you really haven't scaled at all yet. So it's unlikely that your results right off the bat are going to be good enough to be able to scale really high really quickly. In all likelihood, you'll probably need to do some work in terms of optimizing your offer, optimizing your ad creatives. I mean, at this stage, I think a really big part of it is just testing a lot of different ads and different angles to try to figure out what kind of performs best. And you're just doing a lot of optimizing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with all that. There's also just this massive drop off between all these stages, like you mentioned before. I think at this stage, you'd think nobody else would drop off. But a lot of people still quit at this stage where it's like, it just doesn't seem worth it yet. It's like you're not actually, you're seeing profit on the P&L, but you're not seeing profit in your wallet. You're not seeing money that you can blow at the weekend in the clubs. It ain't raining Lambos yet.
Mm-hmm.
And people kind of get disillusioned at this point. Maybe start buying into the whole ecom is dead, dropshipping is dead train of thought. Either that or they scale super fast and super hard and then kind of crash and burn. But people who actually take it slow, I feel like often get disillusioned at this point.
Yeah.
Again, it's just short-term thinking. It's like you only need to be successful once to be set for life. Like literally.
You only need to hit one home run.
You need to be successful once and you might be set for life. So it's like just be patient. Keep with
Yeah.
it.
I think that's a really good point because I feel like a lot of people have this idea in their head that once they get something profitable, that it's just going to be, they're going to be able to scale it like ASAP and they're just going to be making money and it's going to be like a really quick process. When in reality, this third stage, you could be in this stage for months at a time before you actually get to the point where you're making good money. You could be at the point where it's working like kind of, you're seeing some profit. Maybe there's some unprofitable days in there. But this stage can take a while. And I think this is really one of the more difficult stages to break out of because you actually have to like be decent at what you're doing. You have to actually make good ads. You have to actually have a good offer. You have to be able to write decent copy, like all the skills that kind of like underpin ecom. This is where you have to actually be decent at them because you have to get really solid results in order to be able to start scaling. And if you just kind of are like mediocre, then I mean, you might not be able to do that. And this is like, I think this is also the stage where you probably learn the most because you learn a lot in the first stage. Like you're just getting started. If you're starting from absolute zero, you're obviously going to learn a lot from like reading and watching YouTube videos and stuff. But the real knowledge is knowledge that you gain from actually doing the thing, from testing ads, testing products, and seeing what works and what doesn't. And this is the stage where you will directly see, okay, so I tried this did not work that well, so I'm not going to do that again. Tried this did work really well, so I'm going to keep doing that. And then you just kind of keep experimenting with that. And I think this is where you really start to kind of develop your own sort of strategy and you start to figure out specifically for yourself what works for you and what doesn't, instead of relying on what other people say works and what doesn't.
Yeah. It's also a cool stage because you're profitable, meaning that you get to test your ad ideas, your product ideas, whatever, all for free. Like you're no longer burning money to test your ads.
Mm-hmm. I
One
think that's a
thing,
great way to look at it.
yeah. One thing I think people here get a little complacent with is they have one really good ad that's crushing, or often the ad's not even that good, but it's the big winner. And then they test other ads, they don't work as well, so they just keep running that ad for months.
Mm-hmm.
And that fails like 100% of the time. It's only a matter of time. And the longer you run that ad, you're going to build up massive social proof and everything on that one ad. And it's actually really hard to come back from that. Like I've seen ad accounts where it's just super tough to get any sort of decent results once that one ad dies out because just nothing else works as well, but that ad doesn't work anymore. So you really, while you're profitable with this killer ad that you have to keep testing other stuff. Even if it's the other stuff isn't working, you just have to keep pushing through, hitting your head against the wall until something sticks. Well, preferably not your head, but throwing things at the wall until something sticks. Obviously, don't use 80% of your budget for testing, but like 10, 20% of your budget, just keep throwing it at testing all the time.
Yeah. That is definitely a big thing. People get complacent. I think that's a good lead into stage 4 of this, which is what I call the making good money stage. This is when I think like you see the biggest change in your overall life. Once you get to the point where you're not only profitable, but you're actually like making decent money. I would say, I mean, if I had to put a dollar value on it, I would say that this is you're probably your store is probably generating at least 10 grand a month in revenue. I'd say probably between like 10 grand and like 50 grand a month. And you're probably pocketing between like 3 grand and like 10 grand a month. Um, this is really, I think, probably the most exciting stage because this is when, you know, in the previous stage we were talking about like this is when, you know, in stage 3 there's a little bit of profit, but it's not actually showing up in your bank account or like it's not money that you can go blow on the weekend. This is where you start making money and it's actually in your bank account and you can actually use it and you can actually, you know, improve your quality of life with it. When I first got to this stage, like it was absolutely, I mean, it was the coolest thing in the entire freaking world. It almost didn't even seem real. And I mean, as soon as I was in this stage, like I literally packed up my bags and I just flew to New Zealand, like just randomly, because I was like, I can do this. Like I have some sort of freedom now. Um, it was a beautiful freaking thing, man. It was a beautiful freaking thing. And in terms of like the goal at this stage, I mean, at this stage, like you're doing decent. I think. I mean, the goal is really, on one hand, you want to make sure that you don't crash and burn. You want to make sure that you at bare minimum maintain this level of you know, scale of profits, so that, because I think a lot of people, like especially when I was in this stage, I was operating under the assumption like, okay, so it's the month of May, I made 10 grand in profit this month, and then I'd start like extrapolating that out and being like, so I'm basically making 120 grand a year. And like that's a cool thought, but that's not exactly how this works. Just because you made a certain amount of money this month doesn't mean, I mean, that doesn't really mean anything. Like, is it a good indicator that you could make that amount of money the next month? Yeah, maybe. But things can things can get hairy quickly, and results in ecom can fluctuate a lot. And I think you got to keep in mind that, yeah, you're doing well. Like, definitely feel free to pat yourself on the back at this stage, but you can't stop doing the things that you were doing that got you here. And I think that's kind of what some people do, and why I thought that what Scotty was saying at the end of stage 3 was really good, you know, good lead into this stage. I think at this stage, a lot of people end up getting complacent, and I'm not sure how much of this is out of complacency or like laziness versus how much of it is like, okay, this is working, I don't want to fuck it up. But a lot of people stop testing ads. They stop trying to improve their business. They're just like, this is working, so I'm just gonna, you know, do what I need to do to kind of maintain this. And I think they kind of get stuck there. They kind of get stuck in this stage.
100%, yeah. If you make 10K in a month, the only thing guaranteed is that you're going to get a bill from the IRS for like 3 to 4K. Everything else is up in the sky, but that check will be written for sure. I think the other thing you have to realize here is that if you're making 20, 30K a month revenue, 10K a month profit, chances are you have no fucking idea how big that store could be. Like that could probably be $1 million a month revenue for almost everyone. Even those of you who think, not with my product, the market's too small, I don't think there's that much demand, you would be shocked. That I think is probably the biggest message from here, which is where you go from step 4 to step 5. It takes time. It's not going to happen overnight, but almost the market size is almost never the issue. I think that's something a lot of people get wrong, where they try to start a new store at this stage to try and like double, like, hey, if I could get 2 stores doing this, I'd be making twice so much money. I'm like, okay, what if you just 10x the current store, which is usually very possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great lead into step 5, because I think past this point, going from step 4 to step 5. So step 4 is making good money. Step 5 is making big money. Now, big money, it's relative, you know, whatever big money might be to you. To me, if I was going to put a number on it, I mean, I would say like quote unquote big money. And like, again, this is all very relative. If you talk to someone who's doing, who's running a big business, this is going to be very small money to them. But I would say, I don't know. I'd say like kind of this big money territory is when your store's doing at least 100 grand a month in revenue. Because at that point, I mean, if you have decent margins, you're making, probably like 20, 30, 40 grand a month at least. And that's a pretty good amount of income. That is extremely above average. I mean, that in the US, that's depending on your age, that's probably like top 1%. And I think the biggest factor from going from step 4 to step 5, it's mental. It's like 90% of it, at least in my case, it was completely mental. It was me in stage 4 not realizing that I could make so much more money and that I could scale this business way higher than it was. And it was just like me being caught in these limiting beliefs that this was, okay, so 50K a month, like that's probably the most that the store can do. And that's just what I thought. I mean, for months, that was just what I thought. Like that was just how it was. And, I was like fine with that. I'd just gone from freaking pizza delivery boy to making like 10 grand a month, 20 grand a month. I was totally fine with that. But to get to the next stage, I mean, I really do think like, I mean, at least in my case, what happened was it was basically like Black Friday, Cyber Monday happened and we just scaled like crazy and went from doing, like 50 to 100 grand a month in revenue to like 400 to 500 grand a month in revenue in November and December that year. And that just like completely destroyed my limiting beliefs, like that I couldn't make more money, that the store could only be scaled to a certain level. The market's only so big. You don't know what you don't know because you've never seen it before. If you've never seen a store doing huge numbers like that, and you probably don't even really think of it as an option. Like for me, I didn't even know that I had that limiting belief. It was just like it was easy to tell in hindsight, but I didn't realize that that's what was keeping me from scaling up higher. We just never really tried to scale higher because we just never really thought to do it.
Generally, I think Q4, Q1, or sort of weird events like the COVID lockdowns or stimulus checks, those will get you to new heights, and then often you'll be able to maintain that through the slow spells. I guess we were talking about that as well. I mean, right now is a pretty slow spell for us, but a slow spell right now is still better than every month last year, just because we were doing so well January, February, and you just keep that momentum going. And even though it's mentally draining, it's frustrating. In terms of actual finances, it's a pretty good place to be when slow spells become what used to be your best spells.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then, I mean, I guess this is kind of like the big stage, like the kind of last stage. Like, what are your goals here? I mean, for us, our goal, I guess, like I don't know, I guess we're kind of in this stage. The goal is to build something sustainable, long term, and like really build up an asset that's valuable. That's kind of like the next level, I think, from in terms of like making money. There's like making money from like your profit in ecom. And then there's building an asset that you can sell for potentially millions of dollars down the line. And that's kind of what we're focused on. That's what our plan is. Cause I mean, to me, that's kind of how I see how I'm going to get quote unquote rich is, it's through the income from it, but it's also through that one-time wealth creation event where you just get a fat check for, hopefully millions of dollars. I think that's kind of the focus at this stage. It's building. I mean, first of all, it's really making sure that it's like consistent and sustainable, because once you get to this point, you have such a valuable thing. You want to do everything you can to make sure that it doesn't just like die out. Because if it dies out, you just put in so much work. You built it from zero to, whatever, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in revenue. If that died on you, I mean, you would be absolutely devastated. So I think that's probably priority number one. And
You're also going to have a ton of inventory. You can have staff to pay. You can have a lot of issues.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at this point, you probably have some sort of a small team. Maybe you're not as involved in the day to day. And you're kind of like making a lot of big picture strategy type decisions as opposed to being like constantly, managing things every single moment of every single day, doing everything yourself. at this point, a lot of times you can kind of take a step back and focus on, okay, so what do I want to do with this over the course of the next year, over the course of the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? And that's when, I mean, we're still kind of in the, I guess, the beginning stages of this stage, but I don't know. I feel like that's when it really starts to get like, holy hell, like this could be something that could actually set us up for the rest of our entire lives.
Pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff, Schmitty.
It is cool stuff, man. It is cool stuff. It's a beautiful thing that we get to do, this whole e-commerce game. And it really is. That's kind of how I look at it. It kind of is a game. It's like a video game, except you actually make money from it, which is pretty cool.
Sometimes, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah, sometimes you just freaking burn money.
It's a lot more fun when you make money.
It is. It is a lot more fun when you're making money. But yeah, I mean, I think those are the 5 main stages of ecom. You have just getting started and learning, testing, but you're not successful yet, getting to those early stages of profitability, then actually making money that you can spend, making good money, and then you got making big money. So might be kind of interesting to you guys. Hopefully this is somewhat helpful depending on which stage you're at. You can kind of see where you're at. I think it might be kind of helpful to see where you're at in terms of the bigger picture of, this entire process, and just seeing like it actually is. I mean, it's quite the process. This does not happen overnight by any means, but it's certainly worth it. It's certainly worth it if you can stick with it. It's going to take time, but that's the cool thing about ecom is it's we're going to talk about this in the next episode, but it's very front loaded. So once you get it working, it's not like it's like, completely passive, but it's not nearly as active as other forms of income. Your time is for the most part separated from how much money you make. And then from there, you're kind of free to spend your time however you damn well please.
Yeah. I would also say if sort of one piece of advice or the one factor that is going to probably most influence whether you make it through the stages to the promised land, I think it's committing to the business model. Deciding that ecom is the thing that you're going to do and sticking to ecom and not getting shiny object syndrome, starting an agency, then starting to trade crypto, then starting yield farming, then starting a SaaS, then doing some freelancing, then getting into real estate investing. It's like sticking to the business model. Now, ecom is not the best business model. It's not the business model. It's a business model. I can't tell you whether you should pick it or not, but if you do pick it, actually have a think about, is this the thing I want to do? And then if it is, commit to it and don't even look at other options. Like, this is it. There are no other options if you commit to it. I think that sort of mentality of this is my business model and I'm going to figure out how to make it work is going to be key at some point. Of course, that's hard to do as a beginner. The reason pretty much everyone listening to this is doing ecom is because they want to make money. And there's a million other ways that promise to make you money, and a lot of them work as well. Maybe even better. A lot of them might work better. A lot of them might be better suited for your goals. But if you actually want to make it to sort of the big money area, I think you have to commit to the business model.
I would agree 100%. I mean, that goes for anything. That goes for any business model, not just ecom. You're probably not going to get to big money territory in anything unless you fully commit to it. So, and that's great advice, Scott, man. I think that's a great place to leave this one off.
Let's wrap it up.
That has been episode number 94, guys. We'll see you guys in episode number 95.